Okay, thank you. As more people are trickling in, I want to give a quick introduction to our webinar today. We're going to be covering the topic of cellular agriculture and a state of the industry report with Dr. Jordan Jones. We will be having a seminar for approximately 20 minutes, but we will be opening up a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them at the Q&A section at the bottom, or reserve your questions for the end for when we'll be addressing the Q&A. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jordan. Jordan, take it away.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see that so many people are joining us today. Welcome to our webinar on the state of cellular agriculture industry. I'm Jordan Jones, the Managing Director at Jones CellAg. And today we'll be diving into some of the latest trends and developments in cellular agriculture. All right, so let's get started. Okay. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start by briefly discussing the global appetite for meat and its implications. And then we'll be moving on to plant-based meat, followed by cultivated meat and fermentation. After that, we'll be looking at the trends. After looking at the trends of the industry, we'll dive into some of the recent technological developments. And then finally, we'll talk about the role Jones CellAg plays into driving innovation in cellular agriculture. As the global population continues to rise, so does the demand for meat. Beef production, as shown in the graph on the left, excuse me, on the graph on the left, has steadily increased since 1961. If we superimpose a linear trend on this graph using linear regression, we can project that this upward trend will continue and we will have to produce around 100 million tons of beef by the year 2050. The map on the right of the screen shows beef production around the world as of 2022. From this data, we can see that the US, Brazil, and China are among the largest producers of beef. This growing appetite for meat presents several environmental challenges rooted in resource consumption and land use. However, the growing demand also presents opportunities for firms working on alternative protein sources. When we take a closer look at meat production around the world by type, we get a graph like this, where the meat types are arranged from the bottom to the top in order of magnitude. From this perspective, we see that poultry has surged to lead the global meat output, where pork production has plateaued in comparison. Beef production comes in third and continues to show moderate growth. Despite these trends, beef continues to be of high concern because of its environmental output relative to the other species. For example, animal agriculture occupies around 26% of the available land, and as the demand for meat increases, so does the demand for land to support those operations. This chart shows the magnitude of non-fire related deforestation has continued to increase in recent years, whereas fire related deforestation shows more variation. This suggests that much of the deforestation is due to human activity and is likely motivated by agriculture operations. When we look at the moving average, we can see that the impact is slowly increasing year after year. And it is clear that there's a lot of work left to be done if we want to change consumer behavior and reverse a lot of the damage done by traditional agriculture. So that'll do for the demand for meat. So now we're going to move into plant-based alternatives for meat. Retailers like Aldi and Albertsons are producing their own private label plant-based products, and manufacturers are continuously evolving to boost consumer interest. For example, Juicy Marbles released a plant-based steak in Australia. Impossible Foods introduced Beef Light, a low-fat, plant-based ground beef alternative. And Conscious Foods launched a plant-based sushi in Whole Foods. Despite past growth, plant-based protein consumption has plateaued starting around the year 2000, yet animal-based protein consumption continues to climb. This indicates that consumers are predominantly choosing animal-based protein sources over plant-based alternatives. This growth disparity could indicate that plant-based options are not meeting consumer expectations and are not efficiently capitalizing on the increase in demand for meat. As a result, they struggle to pull new customers away from animal-based protein. These insights emphasize the need for an alternative that better emulates the experience of eating meat. So now I'm going to talk about cultivated meat. Cultivated meat products are now approved for sale in the US, Singapore, and Israel. Over 170 cultivated meat companies are operating worldwide, with several companies like Upside Foods and Good Meats already selling their products in select restaurants. Investments in this sector continue to grow, driven by a focus on reducing cost, increasing scale, and improving product quality. Starting in 2016, there was a rapid increase in the number of companies focused on developing cultivated meat. This is particularly the case from 2020 to 2022, when the rate of growth was at its peak. The last 2 years have seen a noticeable slowing in the number of new companies, but projections suggest that the number of cultivated meat companies will continue to grow in the coming years. Similarly, investment in the cultivated meat industry accelerated significantly after 2016, reflecting an increase in investor interest and confidence. While there was a noticeable drop in investment in 2023 compared to 2022, projections still suggest that this growth will continue in the coming years as the technology matures. When we take a look at the academic side of cultivated meat, we can break down the cumulative investment by its source. This view makes it clear that most of the investment in academic research is coming from government sources, followed by nonprofit support and private partnerships. This figure highlights the growing government interest in cultivated meat technologies. Fermentation is another area experiencing significant growth, particularly in dairy products. Companies like Bell Brands and Nourish have launched plant-based cream cheeses, and Nature's Fine introduced a fungi-based yogurt. New manufacturing plants, such as those by Meaty Foods and Liberation Labs, are opening to meet this growing demand. Cultivated meat and fermentation companies have closely tracked one another, with the number of fermentation focused companies experiencing a similar acceleration in growth from 2018 to 2022. This graph shows the cumulative investment in all three of the sectors that we have discussed so far. As you might expect, investment in fermentation-based operations has grown rapidly as well. However, all sectors saw a noticeable decline in investment post-2021, which may indicate a general shift, general market shifts and reallocations. Before diving into some of the research surrounding cultivated meat, let's talk about some of the considerations that must be taken into account when designing a cultivated meat product. For most people, when you think of meat, you think of food, but it's important to remember that meat is first and foremost skeletal muscle, right? Which is composed of three main subtissues: skeletal muscle tissue, intramuscular fat, and connective tissue. In the context of cultivated meat, the intramuscular fat provides a lot of the flavor and aromas associated with meat, whereas skeletal muscle and connective tissue heavily influence the structure and the texture of the meat. To create an accurate analog to traditionally produced meat, it's important that we capture the qualities that these tissues contribute to the experience of eating meat. This is particularly the case with the flavors and aromas from the fat and the structure from the muscle. So let's take a closer look at the structure of skeletal muscle. In this figure, The steak is cut perpendicular to the fiber direction of the muscle, which gives us a clear look at the structure that I'm referring to. If you looked at the zoom image here, you can see bundles of fibers called fascicles surrounded by connective tissue. These fascicles are the fibers that we experience when eating meat. To better recreate the structure of traditionally produced meat, we need to recreate that fascicular structure of the meat. The cultivated meat products that are available today are considered amorphous meats, meaning they don't accurately replicate the structure of skeletal muscle tissue, such as chicken nuggets or ground beef. In theory, these products have the potential benefits of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and limiting the harm to animals. However, they'll likely struggle to compete directly with structured whole meats products or products that possess the fibrous structure of skeletal muscle due to the limited culinary applications relative to whole meats. Creating whole structured meats like steak presents a significant challenge due to the need for vascularization. So without the vascular network, cells cannot receive oxygen and nutrients effectively at the center of the product, limiting the types of meats that can be produced. The number of relevant cell lines identified has increased from 41 in 2022 to around 65 in 2023. Recent developments include a new muscle cell line from carp, a muscle cell line from olive flounder, and an immortalized porcine fat cell line from Nanjing Agricultural University. Olive Farms is developing a bovine embryonic stem cell line, contributing to the diversity in cell lines available for cultured meat diversity. Innovations in media and scaling approaches are crucial to reducing the cost and improving the sustainability. Researchers are focusing on removing animal components from media and using affordable and sustainable alternatives like crop side streams, cyanobacteria, and microalgae. Optimizations of media formulations using mathematical and systems biology techniques, along with efforts to reduce toxic metabolites such as ammonia and improved media recycling, are making significant strides. To support cell growth, researchers are exploring sustainable scaffold materials, including work that I have done along with my colleagues at Boston College, where we use sustainable biomaterials like plant and fungal biomaterials. Examples include decellurized plant leaves, jackfruit, and mycelium. Food waste products like corn husk, pumpkin seed protein, and chickpea protein also, as well as alginates and are also good examples of sustainable materials that can be used. At Jones Cell Ag, our team of scientists and engineers provide a comprehensive support at every stage of your cellular agriculture journey. Our services include cell line development, bioreactor design, tissue engineering, market research, custom prototyping, as well as business strategy and marketing. We begin with the discovery phase, typically composed of 5-hour blocks to understand your needs and ensure that we are the right fit for you and your project. This approach allows us to tailor our expertise to help you achieve your goals. So thank you for joining me on this webinar today. We hope that you found some of the insights informative and valuable. For more information or to work with us, please visit our website at jonescellag.com or contact us at info@jonescellag.com. Now I'd like to open the floor to any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Jordan. If you do have any questions, there should be a Q&A tab either at the bottom or the top of your screen. I see a couple questions here, and we can go ahead and start answering the first one. So Dr. J. Stevens, PhD, asks, you mentioned that meat is composed of 3 cell types, but is it absolutely necessary that all 3 cell types are present in the final product? I'm mostly interested in fat.
Cool. So that's a great question. So a lot of the products that are available, especially when you try to replicate structured meat products, a lot of it is the biomaterial itself. And uh, the percentage of the product that is made up of cells is usually pretty low, somewhere around 10% or even less in some cases. That being the case, uh, any protein that you're getting from the product is likely going to come more so from the biomaterial rather than the cells themselves. That being the case, uh, it's the difference between, say, skeletal muscle and connective tissue like fibroblasts. Their contribution to the protein content is relatively negligible. Uh, that being the case, it is possible that we could see some products, especially in the early days, that are primarily made of fibroblasts because they are easier to cultivate at scale than skeletal muscle. However, I do think it is very important that we incorporate fat into these products because that's where a lot of the flavor and aroma comes from. So I can definitely see in the earlier days, we don't quite represent all of the relevant tissues in the products. But I do think if we really want to compete with traditionally produced meat products, we're going to have to try to replicate its structure pretty closely. Great question.
Great, thanks. We have another question here. Can you speak more to com scale? I guess that's commercial scale. Some startups say 50-liter scale, some say 20K. Where are we really at in this?
Yeah, so there's a range, right? It's really hard to put an exact number on it, but I can definitely say that we're pretty far from being able to reach commercial scale. 20K is definitely on the smaller end, right? On the lower end of that, we need much uh, larger bioreactor systems in order to meet the demand for meat production. So it's really going to come down to technological advancements in media, really, and bioreactor design. So we're pretty far from it right now, but I do think in the near future, we'll be able to accommodate much larger systems.
Cool, thank you. And I think there was a follow-up to that. Somebody just, or they just said Believer says 20K scale. So I think that's Believer meets. But I don't think that was a question. Okay, so we have another question from Stevens. So fire-related loss continues to take place in either case, whether greenhouse gas effects or for other industries. Is it a fair assessment for sustainability of cultivated meat?
Uh, yes, particularly because I don't know about in other places around the world, but a lot of the fires that are taking place, especially here, are due to climate change, and reversing those effects are going to take some time. So definitely for a while, right? A lot of that will continue, even though we're starting to wrap up production of more sustainable meat options. Uh, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I can definitely say that in the near future, it would probably still be a relevant factor.
Great. And if you have a follow-up or you have a more specific question, feel free to just put it in the chat. I don't see any other questions, but I wanted to personally ask you, Jordan. We recently saw Good Meat released Good Meat 3, which contains 3% of cultivated cells, and then the remaining, I guess, 97% is plant-based. Do you think that this might set the standard for companies to have such a low amount of cells in products? And do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing for the industry that it is such a low number?
Well, there isn't really guidance right now on what the minimum amount of cells to scaffold ratio constitutes a meat product right now. So I'm definitely interested in seeing how that develops over time. I don't think it will set a precedent though, and the reason for that is because of how much competition there is in the space. I think that people will continue to try to push that number higher and higher to try to promote their really increase the quality of their products. So I could definitely see especially in the near future, that we have products that exceed the 3% and going closer to the 10% mark. And of course, I would like to see it go much, much higher than that as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And it looks like we have one more question. And actually, that's just a thank you. So that's it. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. Otherwise, we will be publishing a recording of this webinar, and we are planning to have future webinars with Jordan and other consultants in the space as well. So if you are interested in getting involved, feel free to reach out at the email that you see on the screen, and keep an eye out for future emails. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming.